Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Nasa Thread. Today on the channel, I'll be showing you how to make a mermaid skirt with a cut together train. So if this is something you're interested in, give this video a thumbs up and let's get into this. So for this project, I'll be using 3 yards of Ankara and a matching lining piece. So the first thing I went ahead to do was to fold a little piece that will serve for my front. So now what I'm using for my front width, remember this is a mermaid skirt, is 16 inches. So depending on how full you want your front to be, go ahead and fold that. Remember you'll be working with the width, okay? So I just went ahead to fold my Ankara into two with 16 inches of width. So at the top part, I'm going to roll out a line which will serve as my waistline. All right, from there I will take my measurement. Now I'll be using a band of 1 inch for this skirt because it's a long skirt and I prefer using a 1 inch band for long skirts. Okay, that's just for me. All right, so from that point, leaving 1 inch out, I marked my waist to hip, which is 8 inches, and then the knee length. So whatever knee you measure, go up by 2 inches. So my knee is 20 inches. That's from my waist to my knee is 20 inches. So I went up by 2 inches, which made that 18 inches. Now for the full length, is a mermaid skirt. It needs to be long. Okay, it's a long skirt, so it needs to get to the floor. You take the measurement of what you want for that, whatever length you want it to be, and then you add an inch of 1 inch, which will serve as your hemming allowance at the bottom. All right, so I just went ahead to mark that down. Do the same for yours, and I'll go in with my rule to mark out my lines properly. Right, so we have that down. The next thing we want to do is to get our horizontal measurement. Now remember, one part of the skirt is folded, that is closed. Go ahead and mark quarter of your round waist and then add your allowance to that. Now for my skirt, I will not be darting the front part of my skirt, so I added no darting allowance for this. I didn't add any dart allowance for the waistline. I just marked my quarter of my round waist and then added my stitching allowance of 2 inches. I repeated the same thing at the hip point and marked it down. Now for the knee, to get your knee circumference, remove 6 inches from your round waist. Okay, mark it down and then add your hemming allowance. Now what I mean is, if your round waist is 40, for example, minus 6 inches, you have 34. Divide that by 4 and then mark it down at your knee point and add your stitching allowance to that. All right, so I just went in with my rule to connect the points I've made together. Now note that while connecting this, you don't need a straight rule, remember, especially for the hip area. So just go in with your curve rule to connect the points you have made together, and so that you can get this accurately. All right, now from the knee, I'm going to mark this to the edge of my fold. Remember I said I folded 16 inches for the width. So what I'll do is to mark from my knee using a straight rule to the point where my fold ends. So whatever you're using for the width of your front, be it 16, be it 18, or however full you want this to be, go ahead and mark from your knee point to that end. Now you can also add a dart to the front of your skirt if you desire to, but I don't want to add a dart to the front part. That was why I didn't add a dart allowance. Okay, so if you want to add for yours, you can go ahead and do that. So this is what we have. Remember I said our band for the skirt will just be 1 inch of band. All right, that is how I like my band to be 1 inch. So I noticed that the hip area wasn't so curved like as it should be, so just went in with my rule to touch that up, and I'm cutting this out. All right, So this is what we have for the front piece. After doing that, this is what our front piece looks like. You can already see the curve. So at the down part, you notice that it is all straightened at the down, and it should not be so. So from the edge, that's from the open edge of this, I went up by 2 inches at that point, and I just connect a slant like a curve from that point back into the edge of the other end of my skirt, and then I will cut it out. Now this is because it should not be straight at that end. That is the reason for that. So this is the curve. You can see how the down looks like now, the difference. So the next thing we want to do is to fold in another piece for the back. So the back is where we have the extension, especially at the center back. That's where the zip area is where we have the extension. So I just went ahead to fold the remaining part of my fabric. I'm using 3 yards of Ankara for this. Now you can work with any fabric of your choice to achieve this. I'm using 3 yards of Ankara because I didn't want my tail at the back to be too long. Okay, I didn't want my train to be too long. I wanted this to be moderate. So after folding my back piece into two, the extension I had at the bottom was 6 inches. You can have more than that, okay? And then the width I had, okay, was 24 inches. That's after I placed my front piece on it. Now remember, the place you need to fold towards the extended area needs to be your center front, because it needs to match the center back, okay? So the center front needs to match the center back. So that is the area you're going to place facing the area the extended part of your fabric. All right, so I just went ahead to extend my lines out, extended my hip line, extended my waistline and the knee length. So for the back, I'll be adding a dart. So at the other end, I just went ahead to mark 1 inch of that allowance, okay, and I'll connect that back into my hip area. That's just what I did. Remember, I'm not darting the front, but I'm going to dart the back. So I just went ahead to connect that back into the hip area. So ensure it doesn't extend more than that. So your 1 inch should just slant into your hip area. So for my zip allowance at the waist point, I took 1 inch for that. At the hip area, I'll mark 1.5 inches. That's because of the butt. And then for the knee, I will mark 1 inch. Okay. So for the hip, ensure you add half of an inch to whatever normal allowance you're using for the back. Okay, that's for your zip, so that you have enough space, but you have the curve for the butt sitting. It will be well placed. Okay, that's just what I did. Now for your tail can extend from your knee point or from above your knee. Now above your knee will be from underneath your butt. So you just take the measurement from whatever point you want your tail to start from. Okay, that's your train. If you want it to start at the knee point or you want it to start from under your butt, it totally depends on your preference. Okay, so I've connected the lines I have for my zip allowance. What I'll do now is to use my straight rule to connect this to the end of my fold, just like I did for the front. So like I said, I wanted my tail to be moderate. If you want this to be more, you just go ahead and fold your fabric in a bias form in order to get that long extension. Or you can also just mark it straight ahead, cut it out without the extension. Then you go ahead later to mark out, cut out a cone, okay, the extension of the cone you want, and then attach it to the point where you want it to start from. I hope you get that right. So I just marked it down to the end, and then I curved it from the front, okay, to the back. Now remember, the sides of our skirts needs to match. That's because you'll be attaching them together later on in this project. So ensure that the sides of your front and the sides of your back are in tune or in line with each other. That is how it should be. Okay, so I just curved it from that end into the other end where I marked, and what I'll do is go ahead and cut it out. So if you don't understand the curve I'm talking about, just watch closely how I'm cutting this out so that you get a better hang of it.
Give me midnight, you whip up my appetite.
All right, so this is what we have for the skirt. So we have both our front piece and the back piece together. This is what we have. Okay, so you can see the curve at the bottom, you can see how it looks at the down. So just ensure that the sides of your front is matching the sides of your back, because if it's not matching while stitching it down, you're going to be lost. You don't want to be frustrated while you're cutting this out. So what I will do is that at the waist of my front, I'll be going down by 1 inch. This is in order to avoid any bulging in front, any folds in front. So I'll mark 1 inch at the front part, and then I'll extend it to nothing by the side. So your 1 inch you're taking is from your center front, that's from your folded end to the open end, and then I'll just go in with my scissors to take out that part. Right, so remember I said I'm adding a dart for my back piece, right? So I'm going to make a notch for my zip allowance. I like doing that, it helps me a lot. So, and the next thing I'm going to do is to mark out my dart allowance. So I'm just going to take the measurement of my dart allowance from my zip allowance. So remember I added 1 inch for the zip, so I just marked that down and then took my dart. So the dart is taken from your bust span. Okay, whatever your bust span is, divided by 2, add half of an inch and mark it down. So I've gone ahead to cut this out on my fabric exactly the same length and the same width. It is needed for you to cut that out like that. I did same thing for the front piece and the back piece. So ensure that the lengths are matching. So what I usually do for my long skirts is to ensure that, especially for skirts with curves at the end, I cut out my lining to be exactly the same length as the skirt. Then after doing that, I'll go ahead and take out 1 inch throughout this. Remember I added 1 inch for hemming allowance initially while cutting out my skirt, so I'll go ahead and take out 1 inch from my lining piece. Now this is because I didn't cut this straight while cutting this out. This is because it has a curve. All right, if you're not careful, your lining will have a different curve at the end from your skirt. So I prefer doing it this way. It works better for me this way, so that it doesn't have a funny look at the down. I don't know if you understand that. So I prefer it this way. So if you want to do this, I advise you to do this also. Okay, so this is what I have. I'll go ahead and turn this over at the bottom and also by the sides and flip it over to the right side from the top. So I'll also do the same thing for my lining piece, that for my back piece, that is to cut off 1 inch of the lining. So both of my lining piece for the back are placed together. So I'm just measuring 1 inch out of this like I did for the front. Like I said, it works better for me this way. If you have a better way that works for you, kudos to you, but I prefer using this method because when I stitch this down round, they are all matching. They have the same type of curve at the end. It makes my work easier, it makes my work quicker, and I don't have to be friends with my seam ripper. All right, so I'll just cut this out and then do the same thing like I did in front. Okay, so I've flipped it over to the right side, I've ironed it down. Okay, and I also stop stitch the top part of this. Now remember, we're not adding a dart to our front piece, so just keep this aside and bring in the back. So I've done the same thing to the back. I turn this over to the line with my lining at the bottom, at the side. Now you can see the 1 inch inside. This is how it should look like. Okay, so what you want to do for the back is to impute a dart. Remember the notch I made earlier, it serves better. So I always advise you to make notches at the right places. Okay, so for my dart, I want my dart length to be 5 inches. I just mark that down. So what I'll do is to fold this over, and then at the top I'll go in by half of an inch to mark that down. So if you don't know how to place your dart, just let me know in the comment section and I'll make a special video for you. All right, so I'm just going to mark this down and then run a sharp stitch from the 5 inch point to into the other end, so you can see the line I made. That is how I'm going to stitch this down when I go over to my machine. So I've done that. All right, I've stitched it down. You can see it looks like this. I'm sorry you cannot see that clearly because of the color of my fabric, but it looks nice. All right, so what I'll do is to place both of my back piece together. Now I've repeated the same thing I did for the right side to the left side. So whatever you do to the left side of your back piece, repeat the same thing to back right side of your back piece. Now remember they have matching darts and they have same curves and everything. So I'm going to place both of them together, ensure that I'm meeting properly. So where you have an issue with making a mermaid skirt or a PC skirt is when the lengths are not matching. It can be frustrating, okay? So you want to be patient, ensure they're matching, okay? After placing them down, I'll bring in my front piece and I'll also fold it into two. So I want to stitch down my the center back of my skirt. So I just want to place this down so I can mark out the allowance I have left. Remember, we flip this over to the right side after stitching it down by half of an inch on both sides. So the allowance we cut out initially will be shortened. It's a setting that it will be shortened. So what we'll do now is to, after placing the front part down, you just go ahead and then trace out whatever you have left on this. So if you're placing your front, ensure that the sides are matching. All right, they need to be matching. So ensure the sides are matching and then go in with your chalk and then make marks on the points that are left on your back piece, which will serve as your zip allowance. That is just it. All right,
Don't leave me
this is a simple way to just mark this out so that you're not stressed. Okay, so this is what I have. Okay, I'm just retracing my lines again so that they are more visible to the eye. So before stitching down, I'm going to mark the length of my zip, like the length I want my zip to get to. Okay, so I marked 8 inches for my zip considering my band allowance. So go ahead and do that. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is just to use my free hand to mark into the full length of my skirt. So from the line I had, like I marked out from the front, that's the remaining part, I just made a line going into the full length of my skirt. Okay, so you can see what I'm doing, and I'll go ahead and stitch it down, ensuring I back stitch at the point where my zip is going to sit.
baby, you give me ice.
So I've done that. This is our skirt. This is the front part of our skirt. You can see the curve, and from the inside, this is what it looks like. It looks nice. So don't forget to open up your seam and then give it a very, very good press. All right. So this is what it looks like. I'll just keep this aside and bring in the front part. Now what we want to do is to join the front and the back together using the allowance we have. So I'm just placing my tape 1 inch out. That's what should be for my band, and then I just marked my hip point like I did initially while cutting this out. So the simple way to do this, what you're going to do next is to take the circumference of your waist and divide by 2. So instead of dividing by 4, you divide by 2 in this case. So if your waist is 30 inches, for example, divide that by 2, and then it will be 15 inches. So when you take the measurement you have remaining on your fabric, it should be more than 50 inches. Say you have 17 inches, for example, go ahead and distribute the 2 inches extra on both sides of the waist, right? Then that means you share 1 inch to one side and 1 inch to the other side. Repeat the same process for the hip, repeat the same process for the knee. Now for the knee area, you can decide for it to be more fitted, like if you have 1 inch on both sides, you can decide to add an extra 0.25 inches so that it is more fitted, that place is tight, or you just go ahead with your usual measurement. So I did that, and I just connected the points I have with a line using my curve rule. Also remember this part, the hip area is not meant to be straightened. So what I'll do is to bring in my back piece right now and then place it together. So I already went ahead to pin the position where my zip is going to sit together. I just pin that down. So I'll go ahead and ensure that the sides are matching perfectly on both ends, and I'll go ahead and stitch it down, ensuring my marked out point is at the top while I'm stitching.
You whip up my appetite.
So I've stitched it down. This is our skirt. This is what it looks like. It's coming in gradually. It looks nice already. Okay, this skirt looks pretty, and you can see the extension at the back we left. So you can decide to make yours longer if you so desire. This is our skirt. So the next thing I want to do is to fix a band. I've gone ahead to cut out my band for this. Remember, I said I wanted to be 1 inch, so I cut out a band of 3 inches of width, and the circumference or the length is what I have around the waist. Okay, and I just gum stain. I attached gum stain to this, ironed it down, and then folded in half of an inch at one end. So to attach this to my skirt, I'll place this from the inside. That the part that is not folded, I'll stitch it down firstly, and then flip it over to the right side and cover it up with my folded end. After which, I'll go ahead and fix my zip on my skirt. So this is what we have for the result of our skirt. This is what it looks like. You can see how fitted this is around the waist. Now you can see the extension, it is moderated. So if you enjoyed watching this video, please give this video a thumbs up and ensure to subscribe to the channel if you're yet to do that. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.